Hello everyone! Welcome to another episode of Reacting Reddit, where real humans read, react, summarize, and respond to stuff from Reddit. Today we're going to be talking about free speech, and I'm going to give you some context here, because it's quite relevant right now, isn't it? There's been so many events recently, and it's easy when somebody's doing something causing inherent violence, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, we should limit them, But if you think about it, like imagine you're a dictator, right? And you've already, at this point, it's pretty deep in your dictatorship. You're not a new dictator, you know? Like you've been having your opposition killed for a long time. And people start talking a lot of crap about you. And a lot of them have very good reasons. But some of them are just ridiculous. Like totally ridiculous. You know, like they're not even talking about things that actually happened. And these people are so hateful. They still exist, even, and they're being that way. Even to an outsider, you justify all of it. Like, oh yeah, they can all hate the dictator. That's fine. But now think about it, because for that person, for that dictator, he's in a position where if he doesn't limit free speech, sometimes more people will die because violence is so common because of this dictator's actions, probably, right? But that's the reality. Violence is very common. So if this person doesn't limit free speech, more violence will happen, right? I'm not saying that's what's happening here at all. And I'm not even saying that that's a parallel. What I'm pointing out here is that there are situations where you could probably convince a jury or a bunch of people that it was the ethical thing to do to limit free speech, right? Like if you imagine that dictator, it's the opposite argument. Like you could probably have people go both ways with that argument because people fucking hate dictators, right? So anytime you have a controversial subject about something that's inherently very ethical, that's mainstream, like right now, because Trump got censored. Trump just got like taken off the internet. I was Googling to try and figure out what he said in response to all this stuff that's happening. And I don't know. Like, it was like, what? I'm normally just plastered constantly with Trump content. All day, every day, you know, everywhere you go, you see either something from Trump or by Trump or someone who likes Trump or people talking shit about Trump and hating Trump. And basically, so much of content is just consumed by that binary thing. And Trump's a really small part of this world. Like, really small. And it's sad how many people are letting these politicians, whether you like or dislike Trump, how many people are letting these politicians just consume all of your time. Like, you know? Oh, it's pretty intense. But as such, these events have sparked a debate. So let's see what people think on Reddit. Keep in mind that the posts that get picked here, it's all based on what's available on Reddit in response to this post, which was a post that was taken down because it was flagged as misinformation because... Oh no, I was talking about my previous video actually. This post was not taken down. But my point is that sometimes Reddit can be a bit biased. You don't necessarily know which way it's going to lean because I sample so few comments. But I try and get comments from multiple different perspectives. I'm going to be more likely to make a video about a post that has multiple different angles or perspectives responding to it. I'm not really that interested in posts that are just people talking crap over and over again or posts agreeing. Although sometimes you do find that there are topics where that happens a lot and people do tend to actually agree on some stuff online, which boggles my mind, like completely boggles my mind. So let's get into it. What do people think? Should there be limits on free speech? This was originally by Black Flag. You says, the First Amendment wasn't designed to protect warm and fuzzy speech. It was designed to protect offensive and incendiary speech. Think of things like you saw on the Skinheads as protected speech. In my humble opinion, just like the Westboro Baptist Church protesting at funerals is protected speech. This is an interpretation, and the one that I prefer, but keep in mind that the same generation that wrote the First Amendment is the same generation that passed the Alien and Sedition Acts. The First Amendment, as we know it, is something that only came about after court opinions following World War II that were a reaction to the consequences of fascism. That's a good point. We think of this as something we've had our whole life, or the whole United States life, but that's actually not a reality. The reality is, for most of the United States existence, it was free in the sense that there was a lot of land and material to pillage and steal, that it was legally okay to do so. And so that meant that there was a lot of kind of economic opportunity for people who wanted to go there. And then some people also went there to escape religious persecution in the name of religious freedom. But it's important to understand that they were going to die where they were, and they left, and then they went somewhere else, and they're one group of loads of groups that influence the whole country. So it's not really accurate to say like, oh, this is the land of religious freedom, because why would a land of religious freedom have one dominant religion that's integrated into its government? That's complete bullcrap. Like, of course it's not. It's just relatively more freedom at certain points in history to other places, right? Doesn't mean it's just universally free. Absolutely not. Maybe it'll be that way someday, but I'm pretty sure that once that happens, it's not going to be unique to the US. It's going to be like that in many places in the world. But a lot of us take for granted the fact that, like, being able to talk about our opinions, being able to not be forced into a war, these are all new luxuries that most countries, the US and all its freedoms in mind, the US included in this, that was how they were for most of their history. Up until very recently. Like, the drafts didn't end until the Vietnam War for the US. That was way after the World Wars. Like, that was after all the deadliest wars. All the deadliest wars were draft wars, so think about that. Buttloads of people were dying. A lot of people didn't want to fight, but if you didn't go to die, you could be killed for treason. So what do? Huh? Your life's better now. It really is. Yeah, you're crazy for thinking it's an all or nothing proposition. There's already are limits on free speech, for good reasons. There's the yelling fire in a crowded theater argument. Speech that causes an immediate danger to the public is not protected. Slander and libel are not protected. You can't lie and damage someone's reputation without repercussions. False advertising is not protected. I guess nothing's black and white, huh? False advertising is not protected. There's so much false advertising, though. I'd argue that most marketing is false advertising. Most marketing manipulates your emotions because the salespeople, and there's always a dedicated team of salespeople, their goal and their purpose, their sole purpose, is to get as much sales now as possible. It's not about purely making something that's so useful to humans that they can't not spread it to other humans. That's not the mentality most things have. It's definitely not. So while it's like nice to say, oh yeah, we have free speech, we have total free speech. In some ways we don't, and in some ways, even though things are blocked, they still happen all the time, like with illegitimate advertising or great exaggerations in advertisement, or just downright lying in advertising. The fact that there are tons of MLMs that still exist and operate the same way they have, and they still make money. Like, there's tons of problems here. For the record, by the way, there's actually a glitch right now that is hiding people's usernames for some reason, but I don't want that. I actually want to I want to tell you guys who these comments are from, so if you're seeing that, it's totally not intentional. That'll be fixed soon. Anyway, the whole point of freedom of speech is there should not be legal consequences associated with offensive speech, even if it involves walking into a KKK rally wearing a Kill All the White People t-shirt. Look at how often slander and libel cases actually win. It almost never happens. The court has set the standard so high that you can almost never get damages from this case. They did this because of the free speech concerns. Should there be limits on free speech? No, not at all. Mr. Skinhead is free to wear the most offensive t-shirt in the world, but that doesn't mean nobody is allowed to be offended by it. Freedom does not absolve you of consequences. Should there be limits on free speech? No, not at all. Freedom does not absolve you of consequences? I don't think you understand the conflict between these two sentences. This is like classic arguments online, and I guess in real life too, but people like, instead of trying to understand what the other person is saying and listening to them and overlooking the little moments where you get frustrated or you don't agree with them, so many of us we're constantly just looking for something to be like, that, if you say that, well, now I gotta just wait for you to say something that contradicts that. Come on, say it. Yeah, boom, yeah, you said that, and that contradicts that. And then you get them, and then it's like, wait, what was the point of that? Where are we going now? What did I do? Oh yeah, I'm not listening. I'm not learning shit. Like, that's what happens, right? Moving on. There are already limits on free speech as you think of it. It does not mean what you think it does. It does not mean you can universally say whatever you want all the time in any context. Very good point. This person says we even have limits on free speech in the US, and they are bullshit. How much will you be fined if you say or shit on TV? Okay, well let me... This is so ironic. How much will you be fined if you say fuck or shit on TV or radio? How many employers, schools, etc. are allowed to punish you however they want for daring to use certain words? Now, can anyone come up with a single logical reason that certain words aren't allowed like that? Hell, there isn't even a ridiculous religious reason for it. I honestly believe that it's an unconstitutional travesty that you can't say fuck on TV. This is a great example, actually, because this illustrates the kind of misunderstanding about free speech. Because free speech just means that you're not supposed to be able to get in trouble for saying something alone, right? You're not supposed to be attacked by your government for saying something, for sharing an opinion. That's what it's supposed to be applied in. Applying it to all spoken and written content is just dumb. That is not how it works, because of the fact that if you go to a police officer and you tell them fuck you and you start swearing and cursing and going crazy at them, like, you might get arrested, you might get screwed up, right? Even if you never actually like attack them, if you're making eye contact and screaming and yelling obscenities at them, it would take a more patient police officer to not do something to you, right? It's not, you don't have the total freedom to just say whatever you want without any consequences. What having freedom of speech means is that you can't be persecuted for sharing your opinion. Your words can have consequences still, especially when we're talking about private interests, right? And anytime you're talking about television, radio, even YouTube, it's not that you don't have free speech. It's that you are limiting yourself to an audience that is controlled by a specific platform, and therefore you listen to their rules. So, if you're on television, yeah, you can't say fuck or shit. If you're on YouTube, I choose to censor those, but I have the luxury and the freedom of choosing to prove a point in this paragraph, in this sentence, right? And I like that, because this person, in their heads, is like, oh, that's impossible, right? But with YouTube and other things, like, the way you think things are about television and the bitterness and the resentment you have, it's all worthless. It's all temporary, and it's all going away. It's not... We are so well off compared to our grandparents You realize if you compare now to the 1950s, there is not a single country in the world in 1950 that had the average life expectancy of the entire world today, which is around 70 years, right? Some countries more, other countries less. But in the 1950s, there was not a single country in the world that had a life expectancy that long. In the 1950s, life expectancy was usually a third or half of what it is now. We still were being rampaged by certain diseases. And if you go 50 years prior to that, to the 1900s, things like polio, tuberculosis. Do you know tuberculosis has killed more humans than anything else? More humans have died to tuberculosis than humans. And you think of humans as these killers of humans and these violent creatures, but no. You know, we actually, for most of our history, we're just wiped out by disease over and over and over and over and over again. We have been destroyed by diseases so many times. And the fact that this disease now, at its worst, is just a fraction of the regular daily experiences of the 1900s. Oh, if you don't feel grateful to be alive, you got to learn more about those time periods. Seriously, just study what it was like for normal people in 1900 in any country. And look at 1950. It's better, but still way worse than now. Like, even in the poorest country in the world right now, you are expected to live longer than people were in some of the wealthier countries in 1950. And that's not because of like the spread of democracy or the fall of communism or any of that stuff. It's simply really it's because of technology. It's because not only were so many new technologies found, but new technologies became old technologies, became cheap, became mass-produced and widely available. And this meant that the places that were further behind in economic development didn't have to pay as much as the countries who got there originally. And sometimes you find situations where certain countries are actually further ahead than places like the United States. Like Korea, for example. Korea has some of the latest cell phones in the world. The best, fastest, most ingenuitive, most creative cell phones are all currently available in Korea right now. And you cannot get those devices here at the moment in the US market. Yeah, you think of the US as a very developed place, right? But there's a history behind this. How is it that a country that had war to the point of international people interfering with war, Korea had a lot of war, right? How is it that they're so far ahead with technology? And it's because of this effect. It's true that back in the day, so to speak, the US was further ahead than other countries. It had more like landline systems. It had more infrastructure. And other countries didn't have the finances, often because of war the US was involved in. Other countries didn't have the finances to adopt things like landline systems. But then you have 3G technology come into play, or 4G technology, and suddenly it's completely irrelevant to make landlines. Why would you send a wire everywhere to slowly call each other when you could build one cell phone tower and then service 10,000 people within like 10 square miles of that tower? It's so much easier and way, way cheaper. And that's essentially why Korea got so far ahead. And also because Korea is Samsung. Like, if you look at Samsung is like the electronics business of Korea. It's heavily involved. They're like part of each other. It's super cool. It's like if you work for Samsung higher up, you're probably Korean, almost certainly Korean. It's a really cool company, and it's very unique how close Samsung's relationship with their country is. And of course, when I say Korea, I'm talking about South Korea in this case. So what I'm getting at is the world's a lot better. You have a lot more freedom than you think. And even though we're talking about limiting free speech and all this kind of stuff, you have a remarkable degree of freedom. You really do. There's nothing Trump can do. There's nothing Biden can do. There's nothing any of these people can do to actually limit your freedom compared to how little freedom people had before. Like really, even me, like right now, I live in Nicaragua, right? I live in a country where you would perceive the leader here as dictator. You would perceive anyone in a country with a dictator can't speak. And it's true that I can't speak openly negatively about the political, like I can't talk about it here. But that doesn't mean I don't have freedoms, because the reality is, as long as I don't say bad stuff about the government, then it really is simple life. And most people here just want peace. It's not, when people in the United States think of Latin America, they think of people getting robbed and raped, and they think of war and gangs and drug violence. And in some places in particular, this is a harsh reality of Latin America that is real. But it makes me so sad, because the reality is that violence that does exist, by the most part, exists because of the laws that are created in the United States and the way that the drug war is handled. It creates an economic necessity for the resources produced in Latin America to fuel into the drug war and the drug trade. That is created because the United States doesn't provide its own illegal drugs. If it did that, if the United States, and it will eventually, because it's slowly happening, like took on, and you could say, like, an argument that comes to mind, oh, well, they couldn't do that. They couldn't provide that. That'd be bad. And they're already doing that. There's already an opiate epidemic where millions of people are prescribed painkillers for stuff they don't need. They end up getting hooked, and a lot of them end up doing heroin, and people die, not usually because of heroin overdose, but because the shit's illegal and there's fentanyl in their heroin and they don't know that, and it kills them. That's how people die. If you look in the drug world, that's how so many people die. And it's all rooted in the fact that it's all illegal in the United States. And that what's so ironic is all of the people in the United States that consume drugs and talk shit about Latin America, and it's so fucked. Like, I don't blame Latin American people for really resenting US people sometimes. I definitely don't, because the US is in such a good position. Like, it really is. Like, the reality is most places in the world are way, way, way better off. Almost all places are, right? Except places where a war broke out now, where there was a period of peace before. And there are places like that, like Syria, and there were periods in the previous 300-year period where they were better off than how they currently are right now in a death situation, right? But that doesn't mean that most of the world isn't better off. And I don't mean to say that, like, the U.S. has it better. It's just that the great irony of the U.S. is materially that people really do have literally everything they need. And the problem is that they tend to not have a fine grasp on, like, the realities of what they want out of their life and the things that have brought them meaning, and how important it is to make, like, eye contact with humans and kind of get lost in your day and spend time with people and do things as part of a community. And these are all things that are by and by kind of not super common in U.S. society. And it's in some ways, U.S. culture kind of feels like it's like, all right, guys, we did it. We got everything. Yeah, let's just sit back, work our asses off for no reason so that we can keep having everything, and be proud of the fact that we're from the US of A, and we do this. Whereas other countries are more like, yo, we're human. We like things. We like learning. Let's spend time together and make things better together. If that makes sense. I'm not saying all U.S. people are like that. I'm not saying all other countries are like that, because they're not either. But in general, at least for me, like, I was raised in a bunch of different countries. I lived in the U.S. for like over a decade, and I've lived in Nicaragua for almost 4 years now. People in countries where there's less material, they really are more able to be happy with things. So what I've found with the people I know is that the friends of mine who started with less but worked and were able to improve are the improve a little bit. Those are the people who are the best off now, mentally, like emotionally, health-wise. Whereas the people who are worse off are the people who have had money basically providing for something their whole lives. So they have this disconnect from what it really means to be a human and take care of your needs as a human. Like, the reality is you can't, even if you cover work, right? Like in my case, I pay my rent and my bills with stuff I did in the past. I work to make things that will pay me in the future. So I'm never working to earn money today, or I'm rarely working to earn money today. I'm usually working to earn money in the future, right? And because I've been doing that for so long, I can just stop doing something and I'm still earning money from the past. But what I understand now is that even when you don't have all of the commitments that you have, and you're not spending all the time, and you actually have some more free time, you as a person, like me, I'm my own biggest obstacle. That's definitely real. I'm the thing that stops me. And it's important to realize that ultimately that's always going to be true. And you can obsess about the thing you don't have, or the thing that you want, or what your parent did to you or didn't do to you, the support they didn't give you, or whatever. And you can tell yourself that it's effed you up or whatever, but the reality is, we're here, you're alive, and you have more than any other human before you. You have so much access to information and resources. You're the only person who's stopping yourself from doing anything else that you want to do. And you can be like everyone you know and just keep complaining and get lost in the complaining. Or you can be like everyone else you know and complain about the people who always complain. But ultimately, you're just complaining about something else. It's reskinned. You've changed the topic, but somehow the conversation just feels exactly the same, right? All right, everybody. If you want to make content like this, please reach out to us. We are looking for more content creators. We are making software that helps and aids YouTube creators to get started making YouTube videos and transition and get stronger and eventually get to the point where they know what they want to do and make heavily edited content and they feel like it's worth their time. So if you're interested in all that stuff, please reach out to us. We want to have a Zoom call with you. You can get our contact information by going to our YouTube channel, going to the About section, clicking Business Inquiries, doing the CAPTCHA code, and sending us an email saying hello. We want to have a Zoom call with you. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Ciao.